YogaVibes Mamas. I'm Alexandra DeSiato, and this video is called Postnatal Hips, and it is all about how to stretch the places that feel tight and tighten the places that feel way too open and create some balance and harmony in the hip space. If you have been dealing with pubic symphysis pain or pelvic girdle pain, please come into this practice just gently and bail on anything that doesn't feel so good or so right in your body. We're going to need for this practice 2 blocks and 1 blanket. And we're gonna start here at hands and knees. So come on down to hands and knees. If you'd like, take your blanket, put it underneath your knees so that your knees have a little bit of padding. We often start yoga practices with cat and cow. So we're going to start in cat and cow here today, but I'd really like this to be an extra squirmy and wiggly cat-cow. So as you inhale and let your belly draw down toward the ground, you could let your elbows bend a little bit. As you exhale, you might round your spine, but you might also rock your hips a little bit. Let this be very free-flowing. Don't feel like you have to move 1 breath per movement necessarily. If you find some yummy spot that you want to hold and hang out in, you could do that. So this is our cat-cow exploration, emphasis on the exploration part. Since you're taking this time away from baby to care for yourself, make your breath matter. Slow it down and start to breathe a little more intentionally as you explore these cat-cow-like movements. Let's take about 5 more breaths here. You may find in this exploration that one hip feels a little different than the other. And that's why this exploration is so useful for you to just tune into your body in a way that you may not be able to as much these days. I know your attention is somewhere else for the most part these days. If this exploration feels so good that you don't want to stop it, this would be a great time to pause your video and play a little more. We'll move on from here to where we're going next. So we're staying in hands and knees, but engage your core gently and lengthen your tailbone a little bit so you're in a neutral spine position with a little core engagement. And then bring your knees together on the ground beneath you, and then mat or blanket beneath you, and cinch your inner thighs in together. Take a breath in here. As you exhale, sway your hips to one side. Inhale to come right back through center, and as you exhale, sway your hips to the other side. You may feel this mostly in the outer part of your hips. You may feel this coming into your low back. That's a nice place to open and stretch all of those muscles that wrap around and connect toward or to your sacrum, because tightness in those spaces can translate into tightness in the hips. As with our exploration in cat-cow, I think it would be just fine to explore in this table sway too. You could come all the way down and hold, for instance. You could hold halfway down. You could pulse a little bit if that felt quite good. So either continue to sway side to side with your breath or add in a little bit of exploration now. We'll take about 3 more breaths here. Make sure that you're even. So if you need a little more time, pause the video and play in table sway a bit longer. For the next place we're going, we'll stay at hands and knees, but I'm going to turn and face you so you have a little bit better of a view. You can stay right as you are. So back in hands and knees, take your knees hip distance apart once more. Take an in-breath here. As you exhale, take your right leg and send it out to the side. You want your right foot about parallel to your left knee, and then turn your toes slightly out here. Inhale here. As you exhale, start to bend your right knee and shift your weight a little bit in that direction. So we're doing like a half squat here. Inhale to start to straighten out your right leg and come back to the starting point. And then once again, as you exhale, bend your right knee and shift your weight. If this feels great, don't change anything. If your left knee is telling you it needs a little more padding, double up your blanket even more to give it a bit more padding. If pulsing in and out feels perfect, this is what you can continue to do here. You can also play with circling, so that as you inhale, your weight can come forward a bit more to your hands, and as you exhale, you can shift your weight, bend your knee, and then drop your weight back to your heels. And this circle might feel different, might feel more interesting than pulsing or less interesting, and you can play with creating a circle or continuing to pulse. What we're trying to do with these first three movements, the squirmy cat-cow and the squirmy table exploration, and now this squirmy half squat, is we're trying to open and stretch things in gentle ways and in ways that allow you to find the extra tight spots and open them a bit more. So if one part of this movement feels good for you, hang out there. For instance, if you love coming into the half squat, you can always walk your hands a little closer to your bent knee and play there or hold there. If it's more interesting for you to shift your weight back, you could hold there. If continuing to move feels best, well, continue to move. Let's take another 3 breaths this side. If you're circling, you might reverse. Okay, we've loosened up the right side. We're gonna transfer to the next side, but we wanna add one little thing in here. We'll press your hands into the ground and pull your belly in. With your next in-breath, lift your right leg up off of the ground. This might be spicier than you thought. And then slowly, slowly, slowly move your knee back down. Whew. Shake it out just a little bit. All right, let's come into side 2. So from the same hands and knees position with a neutral spine and a little core engagement. Extend your left leg out to the side until your foot is about parallel to your right knee. And then turn your toes slightly out at an angle. Take a deep breath in here. As you exhale, bend your knee and shift your weight. These pulses are a nice first place to start, just to kind of test how tight you feel in your inner thighs or your outer hips. You might find, as you may have noticed in our previous movements, that one side feels quite different than the other. If you're happy pulsing in and out, you can continue to do that. If you liked the circling, you could start that now. So as you inhale, weight comes a little more into your hands. As you exhale, shift your weight over to your left knee, back towards your heels, and then coming back to the starting place. As before, if it feels like you need a little more padding for your knee that's stabilizing you, add some padding underneath your right knee. As you play with pulsing or circling, remember again, the big part of this is exploration. So if you find a place you want to hold, like with your knee bent into the half squat, you can hold it. If it's more interesting for you to continue to move, you could continue to move. If you even just like your legs straight, you could keep your legs straight. And play and explore here for another 3 or 4 breaths. And if you've been circling and enjoying that, you could reverse the direction on those circles. So I mentioned several times that one side could feel totally different than the other. One side might feel like you need to be there for 2 minutes, and the other side might feel like you need to be there for like 2 days. So if you're working on the side now that feels like it needs a little more time and a little more attention, it's a great idea to pause the video and just play with this exploration a little longer. Okay, when you're done with that, oh, I forgot. We've got to do our little challenging leg lift. So when you're done with that, pause here, pull your belly in, lengthen your tailbone. On an in-breath, lift your left leg up. As you exhale, slowly, 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 bring your knee back in. Great, shake it out just a little bit. Okay, we're coming off of hands and knees now. You can move your blanket out of the way. You will want to have a block for where we're going. So mostly what we played with those first 3 moves was stretching and exploration. For the next 3 things that we're going to do, it's a lot of engagement, a lot of using the muscles of our hips to start to fire them up and create balance. As we move into this engagement, if it starts to feel like too much, or I'm offering too many options, or we're there a little too long, just take a break and come back when you're ready. Okay, let's start on our backs with a block nearby. This first starting place, make sure you don't have anything underneath your head, no blanket or pillow. Take your block and bring it between your legs, between the thigh, the soft part just above your knee. I like my block about that far apart between my legs. Some people prefer it a little bit thinner. So you might determine which one feels best for you to hug into. Take your feet hip distance apart if they're not there already. Bring your arms next to your torso. We're coming into bridge pose, as you might imagine. So with your next breath, start to lift your torso, press into your heels, and lift your hips. When you arrive here, adjust as needed. And then a couple of cues here that can be helpful. Press your heels down, and as you do so, you might notice that your glutes engage a little bit more and your thighs lift. You don't want to be hyperextending into your low back, so you want to keep a nice plane here so that your hips and your rib cage are in that same plane. So heels pressing down, glutes firing up, and then take a nice deep breath in here. And as you exhale, pull into the block, firing up your inner thighs. Woof, this feels exciting, I know. As you inhale, release a little bit. So you're keeping the block where it is, but you're not hugging in quite so much. As you exhale, again, press in on the block. Fire up your seat, your inner thighs, your quads. Inhale, gentle release. We'll do that 3 more times. Exhale, squeeze in on the block. You might even find that your core is getting involved. That's a good thing. Belly hugging in too. Release as you breathe in. Exhale, squeeze on the block. Release as you breathe in. Exhale, squeeze on the block. Awesome, that was 3. So hold on to that through your exhalation. We're almost done here. Release from that, and then we're gonna pulse and release a little bit faster on the block. Your breath can be quicker, or you can continue these longer and slower breaths. So it looks like this. Squeeze on the block, release. Squeeze on the block, release. Squeeze on the block, release. Now, as you're playing with this, keep going. As you release, you can begin to play with not releasing quite as much. So you push in and then you gently release, but maybe not quite as much. This starts to feel like a really decent amount of work. So remember, you can take a break at any point. We're just gonna be here for the count of 5, almost done. 4, keep pressing your heels into the mat. 3, 2, and 1. Whew, that feels like it works. Come on down. Take your block and move it out of the way. And take just a moment here to maybe rock your knees a little bit, or bring your knees to your chest, or even just sort of melt into a little puddle and take a few breaths there. Okay, let's continue finding good engagement for our hips. Now roll to one side and press your way up. For where we're going next, you're going to want to block again. Now bring a block toward the front edge of your mat, toward the front area of your mat. Your hand is going to be on it. Set yourself up in the starting kneeling position and go ahead and mimic me on the mat so that you're kneeling about halfway down your mat. Take the hand that's closest to the block and bring it down to the block, and then extend your opposite leg out. This is our starting position. Now, anatomy is different for all of us, so the block underneath my hand feels best. I've seen some people do this with their fingers on the ground, so that could feel better for you. Conversely, you might need 2 blocks, in which case, bring another block along for the ride, so you're a little bit taller, okay? All right, so 1 block, 2 blocks, or no block. Set yourself up here, and in this nice supported side plank position, lengthen your tailbone and pull your belly in, and make sure that your supported leg feels okay. If your knee needs more support, grab your blanket. Inhale here, and as you exhale, take your outstretched leg and lift it up. Whew, already this feels like a lot of work for me. In your body, it might be that your leg can come up a little bit higher. I'm pretty tight in my inner thigh. That's about the extent of where I'm going to go. But you should lift your leg until it feels like things are firing up in glutes and outer hips. From here, we're going to draw a square with our lifted leg. So lift it up, bring it forward, drop it slightly down, drop it back. So we're creating a square every time that we move our leg gently around, a square that's about the size of a tennis ball, so a pretty small square. I find that drawing a square as opposed to drawing circles allows you to keep this a bit more controlled. Let's draw 1 more square, and then rest. Whew, that feels like an awful lot of work to me. It might for you as well. So shake it out a little bit, roll your shoulders, take a breath. Okay, we've got to even it out, so we're going to do it on side 2. So move your block or blocks to the other side as needed. Set yourself up again in the starting position. Find some length in your tailbone and pull your belly in. Make sure your supporting leg is quite comfortable. You can always put a blanket underneath that. And then lift your leg up as you exhale. This first starting place is spicy, and it might feel extra spicy because your supporting leg is doing a lot of work, but it just already did work as the lifted leg on the first side. So side 2 can often feel a bit more challenging. So in this funky side plank play, you could always just hold, exploring lifting your leg into the spicy place for you. Or you could draw those squares again. So if you're going to draw a square, lift your leg just a little higher, bring it forward, drop it slightly down, bring it back. These nice controlled movements. We're getting some good core work incidentally here too, but we're getting a lot of good work for the outer hips. So breathe here, especially as things feel spicy. You might exhale to lift. Keep these squares nice and controlled. I hope you can see that I'm shaking here. This one's always really challenging for me. So if you're not shaking at home, you can be like, wow, I'm rocking. And if you're shaking, you can be like, okay, she's shaking too. Let's do 1 more. Whew, okay. That feels like it works big time. So wiggle it out and let it go. We've got 1 more thing that we're going to do to engage our hips. And this is a pretty simple pose. It's east-west pose or reverse plank. I'm going to show you 2 versions, a modified version and the full version. So you don't need any props for this. Set yourself up on your mat in a seated position with your feet in front of you. Your hands can come behind your back, and your fingers can be turned forward as mine are, or out to the sides, or even facing away from you. Take a breath here. As you exhale, lift up and engage your glutes. So really think about squeezing your glutes and lifting your seat. Often we think of this pose as being very focused on shoulders, and shoulders get some nice opening here too, but we're trying to fire up glutes and hamstrings. This is the first version that's a bit modified. You could stay here and breathe, let your head drop back if that feels good. Take a round or 2 of breath. If that felt like the perfect place to be to work on glutes engagement, do that again. If you'd like something a bit spicier, for this second round, come into the full version. So your legs will straighten out. Hands can be in the same place, fingers turned, whatever direction feels best for you. Take an in-breath here. As you exhale, engage and lift. Keep your focus on glutes engaging. So seat, booty, squeezing. Lots of good work there. Take whatever options you'd like for the upper body, so your head can tip back if that feels good. Keep your hips nice and lifted. Focus on the lower body. Take 3 breaths. When that feels like it's done, it is done. So unravel from it. Give yourself a moment here to like shake out your hands, roll your shoulders, let it go. I hope that your hips feel a bit more open, mine do. This might be a great time to take Shavasana if you have the time and the space to rest quietly in your mat while someone else is watching your baby or your baby is sleeping, then please take a Shavasana. This would be an awesome time to add that in for about 3 to 15 minutes. If you really enjoyed this postnatal video, you can find more by me on YogaVibes. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste, mamas.